Two black Navy SEALs watched as cops targeted a waitress. What they did next shocked the whole diner. "Both of you want to play the hero for some waitress. Walk away or this gets messy," Officer Blake Donovan said, as his hand stayed locked around Caitlin's arm. He looked at Jamal Hawkins and Devin Harass with the contemptuous ease of a man convinced he was untouchable. Then he turned his back on them like they were nothing, like the uniform, the rank, and their years of classified operations meant nothing inside this diner. Jamal and Devin held their ground, steady and unmoving. Years of military discipline kept both men composed. What Donovan could not possibly know was that the Navy SEALs he had just dismissed had dismantled more dangerous operations than this and had never once walked away from one unfinished. The sign was hand-painted, crooked letters on a piece of plywood nailed to a fence post at the edge of the highway ramp. Millie's Diner, best biscuits in 3 counties. Jamal Hawkins drove past it without slowing down. "No," he said, "you didn't even look at it." "I looked." Devin Harass twisted in the passenger seat and watched the sign disappear behind them. He pressed a hand to his chest like a man who had been wounded. 3 counties, Jamal. It says 3 counties. It says somebody painted a sign. A man with conviction painted that sign. Devin settled back and crossed his arms. A man who believed in something. Jamal said nothing. He kept both hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road. They had been driving since early morning. Kings Bay was behind them. Home was ahead. The only thing he wanted was a shower, a real bed, and hours of silence. The truck slowed down. Devin did not say a word. He just looked out the windshield with a small, satisfied smile. Jamal took the exit ramp. Harland Falls, Georgia, was not much to look at from the road. A gas station, a dollar store, a used car lot with plastic flags strung between the light poles, the kind of town that the interstate was built to bypass, and mostly did. But Millie's Diner sat right on Route 9, like it had always been there and always would be. Red vinyl booths in the windows, a hand-lettered chalkboard by the door advertising the daily special. The parking lot had several cars in it, which was all the review either man needed. Jamal pulled in. The bell above the door announced them when they walked in. Cool air hit them, the good kind of diner cool, the kind that smells like coffee and bacon grease, and something that takes you back to somewhere you cannot quite name, but know you have been before. The place was about half full. 2 old farmers sat at the counter on chrome stools, bent over their mugs like they had been there since sunrise and planned to stay until noon. A young couple in a corner booth was coaxing a toddler into eating scrambled eggs. A woman near the window had a paperback open in front of her, a half-eaten piece of pie beside it. The photographs on the far wall covered it almost completely. Faces of regulars going back decades, smiling out at the room like a family reunion that never quite ended. Jamal looked at the farmers, the woman with the book, the photographs. Some places just feel like something, he thought. Hard to explain. Easy to feel. They slid into the back booth. She appeared almost immediately. She was young, moving through the diner the way someone moves when they know every inch of the place by heart. Not rushed, not slow, just sure of herself. Her uniform was clean and pressed. Her hair was pulled back neat. She had a smile that she gave freely, and a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only table in the room. "Good morning, gentlemen." Her name tag read, Caitlin. She sat down 2 menus without being asked and flipped to a fresh page in her order pad. "Coffee to start?" "Please," Devin said. Then he looked at the chalkboard on the wall. "Are the biscuits as good as the sign says?" She did not hesitate. "Better." Jamal looked up. Bold claim. Bold biscuits. She smiled and poured the coffee without spilling a drop. Give me a few minutes and you will stop questioning the sign. Devin pointed at Jamal. He did not want to stop. Most people don't. She tucked the coffee pot under her arm and looked at Jamal directly. Most people who don't stop are wrong. Jamal almost smiled. Almost. 2 orders of biscuits and gravy. Good choice. She took the menus back and headed toward the kitchen with the ease of someone who had made that walk countless times. Devin lifted his mug. I like her. You like everybody? I like good people. He sipped his coffee and leaned back. She is good people. You can just tell. Jamal picked up his own mug. Outside the window, Route 9 rolled past, quiet and unhurried, a town going about its morning like nothing in the world was wrong. He let himself relax just a little. They were just passing through. That was all this was. The biscuits were everything the sign promised. Jamal was halfway through his second one when the bell above the door rang again. He did not look up right away. He was reaching for his coffee. Devin was saying something about the gravy. It was a good morning, a quiet one. Then he felt it. He could not explain it exactly. It was not a sound. It was not anything he could point to. It was more like a change in pressure, the way the air in a room shifts when something bad walks into it. His body recognized it before his brain did. Years of training had made him that way. He looked up. 2 officers stood just inside the door. The first one was big, not tall, just wide and solid, like something that had been pressed into its shape by force. His uniform was tight across the shoulders. His name tag read, Donovan. He had the kind of face that might have been handsome once before. Whatever he was on the inside started showing up on the outside. His eyes moved across the diner slowly, taking inventory, deciding what was his. The second officer was younger, lean. He stood half a step behind Donovan and kept his eyes on the floor. His name tag read Ruiz. He had the look of a man who had learned a long time ago that it was safer not to see things. Jamal watched the room react. The 2 farmers at the counter did not turn around. They just got very still and very interested in the bottoms of their mugs. The young couple in the corner pulled their toddler a little closer without thinking about it, the way you pull something precious toward you when you sense danger nearby. The woman with the paperback stopped reading, but she did not look up either. Nobody looked up. That told Jamal everything. Donovan did not sit down. He did not pick up a menu. He walked straight to the counter with the slow, deliberate stride of a man who had never once in his life walked into a room he did not own. He stopped and looked down the counter until he found what he was looking for. Then he pulled out a stool, sat down, and drummed his knuckles on the counter 3 times. Loud, sharp, like he was knocking on a door he already owned. Hey. He did not say please. He did not say excuse me. He just said it at the kitchen, at nobody in particular, like the word itself was a command. Hey, somebody want to get out here? Caitlin came out of the kitchen with a coffee pot in her hand. She saw him. The smile she had been wearing since Jamal and Devin walked in did not disappear exactly. It just went somewhere far away behind her eyes, where it could not be touched. Officer Donovan, her voice was steady. What can I do for you? Donovan leaned back on his stool and looked her up and down slowly. Not fast, not subtle. The kind of look designed to make a person feel small. He let the silence stretch out longer than it needed to, just because he could. Got a complaint filed against you, he said finally. Register came up short last Saturday night. Customer says they watched you pocket it right off the counter. The diner went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet. The held breath kind. Caitlin blinked. That is not true. Customer filed a report. What customer? Her brow came together, genuinely confused, not defensive. I worked that whole shift. Nobody said a word to me. Nobody complained about anything. Saturday was a normal night. Donovan shrugged like that was beside the point. Well, somebody had something to say about it after the fact. Who? She asked. Who filed this report? He did not answer that. He just smiled the same flat smile and kept going like she had not asked at all. Because here was the truth, sitting right there in the open for anyone willing to see it. There was no customer. There was no complaint. There was no incident report with a name and a signature sitting in some filing cabinet down at the station. There was nothing. There had never been anything. Donovan had walked into this diner with a story he made up himself, and he was telling it with a straight face because he had done it before, and nobody had ever made him stop. No, he smiled. It did not reach his eyes. That is real interesting, Caitlin, because you were the only one working the counter all night. So either the money walked out on its own. He let that hang there deliberately. Let the whole room hear what he was not saying. Manager Hargrove appeared from the back office doorway right on cue, like a man who had heard his name called and was not sure whether to answer it. He stood there in his manager's apron and looked at the floor and said absolutely nothing. He could have said the register balanced that night. He could have said he pulled the receipts himself, and every dollar was exactly where it was supposed to be. He knew that everyone in this building who worked that shift knew that. He said nothing. Not a word in her defense. Not a question. Not a single pushback. He just existed in the middle distance and let it happen. I did not touch that register, Caitlin said. Donovan tilted his head. You calling me a liar? I am telling you the truth. He stood up off the stool slowly. He straightened his belt, adjusted his badge, took his time. Every movement said the same thing. I am not in a hurry, because you are not a threat to me. He walked around to her side of the counter into her space, close enough that she had to look up at him. Here is what is going to happen, he said, his voice dropping low. You are going to take off that little apron, and you are going to come down to the station with me, and we are going to sort this out. And if you have got nothing to hide, then you have got nothing to worry about. He paused. Right. I have 4 tables. They will survive. I am in the middle of my shift. Take off the apron. Each word landed like something thrown. He shot a glance back at the room, at the farmers, at the couple, at every person in that diner who was currently staring hard at the table in front of them. His expression said, You see this? Nobody is stopping me. Nobody ever stops me. Then he turned back to Caitlin and snatched her by the forearm. His fingers dug in hard. Not a grip. A vice. Yanking her forward so fast, she stumbled into the counter's edge and knocked the coffee pot sideways. It hit the surface with a crack. Brown coffee splashed across the counter and dripped onto the floor. The whole diner flinched. Caitlin sucked in a sharp breath through her teeth. She did not scream. She did not cry. But her free hand flew to the counter's edge to catch herself, and her eyes, those steady, warm, capable eyes, went wide for just a second with something that looked a lot like pain. Jamal set down his coffee cup. He set it down slowly and deliberately, the way a man sets something down when he has decided he is done sitting still. Devin already had his phone on the table, camera facing forward. His thumb hovered over the screen. Neither of them said a word. Not yet. Jamal was already moving. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He pushed back from the booth with the kind of calm that is not really calm at all. It is something colder, something controlled, the kind a man develops when he has spent years in places where panic gets people killed. Devin did not follow him. He stayed right where he was, slid his phone to the edge of the table, and pointed the camera at the counter. His thumb hit record without a sound. Jamal crossed the diner in 8 steps. He stopped 6 feet from Donovan, close enough to be heard, far enough to be seen by every single person in the room. "Officer," his voice was level, unhurried. It cut right through the silence like a blade through still water. "Take your hand off her arm." The whole diner held its breath. Donovan turned around slowly. His eyes traveled up Jamal's frame. The uniform, the broad shoulders, the rank insignia, and something shifted behind his face. Not fear, not yet. Just the look of a man doing quick math and deciding he did not like the numbers. "This is police business," Donovan said. "Walk away." "I am not going to do that." Donovan let go of Caitlin's arm, not because he wanted to, but because he needed both hands free and a new angle. He squared up to Jamal and pulled himself to his full height, which still was not enough. "You got a problem, soldier?" "Navy." Jamal reached into his breast pocket and produced his military ID. He held it out flat so the entire room could read it. "Master Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy SEALs. And yeah, I have got a problem." Donovan looked at the ID. Looked at Jamal, looked at the ID again. "I do not care if you are the president," he said. "You do not interfere with law enforcement. You have no lawful basis to detain this woman." Jamal's voice did not get louder. It got cleaner, sharper, like he was reading from something printed in large, clear letters that everyone in the room could follow along with. "No probable cause, no warrant, no witness statement on record, because there is no witness and there is no report. And you know that better than anybody standing here right now." Donovan's jaw tightened. Jamal kept going. "Under Georgia Code, Title 51, Chapter 7, what you just did, grabbing this woman, pulling her physically, making her stumble. That is unlawful restraint. That is battery. And it happened in front of a room full of witnesses." He paused just long enough to let that land. "And a camera." Donovan's eyes cut sideways to the back booth. Devin gave him a small wave. Phone still recording. For the first time since he walked through that door, something flickered across Donovan's face that was not confidence. Ruiz, still standing by the door, shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He looked at his partner. He looked at the floor. He looked at Jamal. He looked like a man who was beginning to understand exactly which side of history he was standing on. "You are making a big mistake," Donovan said, low, private, just for Jamal. "I have made mistakes before." Jamal did not blink. "This is not one of them." The silence stretched out. Then Donovan smiled. That flat, practiced smile that did not mean anything good. He straightened his badge, took one long look around the diner, making sure everyone saw him leaving on his own terms, and then pointed a finger at Caitlin. "This is not finished," he said. "I will be back with documentation, and next time your little bodyguards will not be here." He turned and walked out. Ruiz followed without a word. The bell above the door rang behind them. Nobody moved. Then the farmer at the counter, the older one, the one who had been staring into his coffee mug since the moment Donovan walked in, turned around on his stool and started clapping. Slow at first. Then the woman with the paperback joined him. Then the young couple. Then the other farmer. It built into something that filled the whole room and bounced off the photographs on the wall and rose up to the ceiling. Caitlin stood at the counter. Her arm was red where Donovan's fingers had been. Her coffee pot was still lying on its side in a spreading brown puddle, but her back was straight. Her chin was up. She looked like a woman who had been hit and had not fallen. She turned to Jamal. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But it will not stop." Jamal looked at her. "Tell me," he said. Hargrove disappeared back into his office without a word. Nobody was surprised. Jamal slid into the corner booth. Devin stopped recording, pocketed his phone, and moved to join them. Caitlin untied her apron, folded it over the back of a chair, and sat down across from them both. She pressed her fingers flat against the tabletop, like she needed something solid to hold on to. The diner had gone back to its quiet hum. The farmers returned to their coffee. The woman with the paperback found her page. Everyone was pretending very hard that everything was normal. Caitlin looked at her hands for a moment. Then she looked up. "His name is Ethan," she said. "My little brother. He is 24. She said it the way you say the name of someone you are scared for. Carefully, like the name itself was something fragile. "He does HVAC work. Heating and cooling, has his own clients, good reputation, never been in trouble a day in his life." She paused. "Some time ago, Donovan pulled him over on Route 9, right out front practically. No broken taillight, no expired tags, no reason at all." Devin leaned forward. "What happened?" "Donovan made him get out of the car, searched the whole vehicle, made Ethan stand on the side of the road for a long time while he ran his name over and over." Her jaw tightened at the memory. "Ethan said cars were slowing down to look. People he knew driving past, watching him stand there on the shoulder like a criminal." She shook her head. "Donovan found nothing because there was nothing to find. Did not write a ticket, did not give a reason, just let him go like it was nothing. But Ethan did not let it go." Jamal said no. She almost smiled at that. "He is not built that way. He filed a formal complaint with the sheriff's department, wrote it all out himself, submitted it the right way through the right channels." Her almost smile faded. 2 weeks later, a woman named Mrs. Evelyn Hayes. She lives on Route 9. She saw the whole stop from her front porch. She got a visit from 2 officers, plain clothes. They sat outside her house for a while, then knocked and asked her some questions. Caitlin's voice stayed even, but her fingers pressed harder into the table. Her statement was never recorded, never made it into the complaint file. The diner felt smaller than it had a minute ago. Sometime after Ethan's complaint was officially logged, Donovan pulled him over again. She stopped, swallowed. This time Donovan said he found drugs in Ethan's trunk. Said there was a bag of meth sitting right there in plain sight when he opened it. She looked at Jamal directly. "Ethan has never touched drugs. Not once. Not ever. I would know. I am the only family he has got, and I would know." The words sat on the table between them, like something heavy. "He has been in county jail. His trial starts soon, and yesterday his public defender called me and said he was withdrawing from the case. Something about a conflict of interest. Would not explain it. Just said he was off the case, and Ethan would need to find other representation." Devin said quietly, "Right before trial." She nodded. "I have been calling lawyers, legal aid, anyone I can find. Nobody is moving fast enough. Nobody is moving at all." She looked down at her folded apron. "The charges carry a mandatory minimum of 8 years. The number landed like a fist. Caitlin was 28 years old. Her brother was 24. 8 years meant he would be 32 before he saw the outside of a cell. 8 years meant his whole life, his work, his clients. Everything he had built would be gone before he got out. And Donovan knew that. That was the point. This morning, When Donovan walked in here and grabbed my arm in front of all these people, that was not about any register." She looked up. Her eyes were clear and steady and burning with something that had been burning for a long time. That was him reminding me that he can do whatever he wants to me, to Ethan, to anybody, and nobody is going to stop him. The table was quiet. Devin looked at Jamal. Jamal looked at Caitlin. Then Devin said, simply and without any drama at all, "We are not leaving." Jamal nodded once, slow and certain. "Tell me everything about Ethan's case," he said. "From the beginning." Jamal stood up from the booth and walked outside. He needed air. He needed quiet, and he needed to make phone calls that Caitlin did not need to hear him make. Not because they would frighten her, but because some of the favors he was about to call in existed in the space between official and unofficial. And that space was not somewhere civilians needed to visit. The morning sun hit him full in the face when he pushed through the door. Route 9 rolled past slow and easy. A pickup truck, a school bus, a woman walking a dog. Far shoulder. A perfectly ordinary morning in a town that had been hiding something ugly for a very long time. He made 3 calls. The first was to a JAG officer named Billy, who owed him a favor going back years. Jamal gave him 2 names, Blake Donovan and the Harland County Sheriff's Department, and asked him to run everything he could find. Publicly available complaint history, disciplinary records, civil suits, anything. The second call was to Agent Ramirez. He got voicemail. He left a message that was short and specific and said everything it needed to say without saying anything it should not. The third call was to Atlanta. The phone rang twice. "Nicole Bennett, it is Jamal Hawkins." A pause, then, "Jamal." Her voice shifted, not softer, just more focused. Nicole Bennett had 2 speeds, working and sleeping, and she slept very little. "How bad?" 24-year-old man, fabricated drug charges, trial approaching soon, public defender just withdrew. The officer who made the arrest has a history, and the DA's office is involved. He paused. "I need you down here." Another pause, shorter this time. "Where is here?" "Harlan Falls, Georgia, Route 9. I know where that is." He heard movement on her end. A drawer opening. Keys. "I'm getting my bag." That was Nicole. No negotiation. No list of reasons why it was complicated. Just her bag off the hook and her feet moving toward the door because that was who she was and had always been. "I will text you the address," Jamal said. "Do not bother. I will find the diner." She paused. There is always a diner. He hung up and stood in the parking lot for a moment longer. Then he went back inside. Devin had not been idle. He had his phone flat on the table and both thumbs moving, pulling up every public record he could find. Court filings, news archives, county commission minutes. The kind of documents that lived in plain sight on government websites that nobody ever thought to look at. Jamal slid back into the booth. "Nicole is coming." Caitlin looked up. "Who is Nicole?" "The best civil rights attorney in Atlanta." Jamal looked at Devin. "What do you have?" Devin turned his phone around and set it on the table between them. "The DA prosecuting Ethan's case," he said. "His name is Marcus Langston." Jamal read the screen. Then he went very still. "Billy called me back while you were outside." Devin said, "Ran the names like you asked." He tapped the phone. "Marcus Langston and Blake Donovan are brothers-in-law. Langston married Donovan's sister years ago. They are family." The word landed in the booth like a stone dropped into still water. Caitlin stared at the phone. They are what? Family, Devin said. And it goes further than that. He scrolled down. In the last few years, 3 people filed formal complaints against Donovan. 3 separate incidents. 3 separate people who decided to do the right thing and go through the proper channels. He looked at Caitlin. Sound familiar? She said nothing. First one moved out of town sometime after filing. Second one recanted. Withdrew the complaint completely. No explanation on record. Devin paused. Third one is currently sitting in the state penitentiary on a conviction prosecuted personally by Marcus Langston. The booth was absolutely silent. Jamal looked at the table. He was putting it together the way he put everything together, methodically, completely, without room for the comfortable lie that this was coincidence. This was not one bad cop having a bad day. This was a system built carefully, maintained quietly, designed to make sure that anyone who challenged Blake Donovan ended up worse off than before they tried. Caitlin had understood this in her bones for a long time, but hearing it laid out in plain language, piece by piece, was something different, something that made her press her hand flat over her mouth for just a moment. Jamal turned to her. "Your brother did not lose this fight," he said. His voice was quiet, but it did not waver. They just made sure he was fighting it alone. He looked at her steadily. He is not alone anymore. Attorney Nicole Bennett arrived in the evening. She drove a dark blue sedan that was dusty from hours on the highway and pulled into the motel parking lot like she owned it. She was sharp-featured and dressed in a charcoal blazer over a white blouse that somehow still looked pressed after the long drive. She had a leather briefcase in one hand and a rolling carry-on in the other, and she moved like a woman who had learned long ago that time spent slowly was time wasted. Jamal met her in the parking lot. She looked him up and down once. "You look tired. You look like you drove a long way." "I did." She handed him the carry-on without breaking stride. "Which room?" By evening, the 2 motel rooms had become one war room. The connecting door was propped open. Devin had his laptop open on one bed and 3 legal pads spread across the other. Nicole had commandeered the small desk and covered it with documents she had pulled and printed at a copy shop on Route 9. Ethan's arrest report, the complaint filing, Langston's public case history. Everything she could get her hands on in hours of driving and thinking simultaneously. Caitlin sat in the corner chair. She had her hands wrapped around a cup of gas station coffee that had gone cold. She was not drinking it. She was just holding it. Nicole read everything twice before she said a single word about any of it. Then she sat down the last page, took off her reading glasses, and looked at Caitlin directly. "I am taking your brother's case," she said. "I am filing an emergency motion tonight to assume his defense. By morning, I will be his attorney of record." She paused. "I need you to tell me everything you know, not what you think matters. Everything," Caitlin told her. Nicole wrote without looking up. Her handwriting was small and fast and covered the legal pad in straight, dense lines. She asked questions that cut to the exact center of things. No warm-up, no easing in. What time was the second stop? What road? What direction was Ethan traveling? Had he been to any location that day that could explain being in that area? Who knew he filed the complaint? How long between the filing and the arrest? Caitlin answered every question. Jamal and Devin listened and said nothing. This was Nicole's room now. When Caitlin finished, Nicole tore the top sheet off the legal pad and pinned it to the wall above the desk with a thumbtack she produced from her blazer pocket, like she had been expecting to need it. "Here is what we are working with," she said. "No defense attorney on record as of this morning. A compromised DA who is family to the arresting officer. A judge who has spent decades in the same county as both of them. She capped her pen. The case against Ethan looks airtight on paper. That means our job is to find the paper that is not there. Devin looked up from his laptop. I am already mapping every camera within 2 blocks of the arrest site. Good. Nicole pointed at Jamal. I need your federal contact. The one you mentioned on the phone. Ramirez. Get him on standby. I do not know yet what we will need him for, but I want him warm. She turned back to her desk. I am filing the motion in the next hour. Tomorrow morning, first thing, we go see Ethan. The jail visit was scheduled for the next morning. Jamal had been in difficult rooms before, rooms where everything was wrong, and the air itself felt hostile. But there was something about a county jail visiting room. The fluorescent light, the bolted-down furniture, the thick reinforced glass that put a particular kind of weight on a person, the weight of a system that had already decided what you were. Ethan was brought in wearing a county-issued jumpsuit 2 sizes too big for his frame. He was 24 years old, and he had been inside, and it showed. Not in weakness. He walked straight, kept his chin up. But around his eyes there was something that had not been there before, something dim. The look of a man who has started to believe that hoping costs more than it is worth. He sat down across the glass from Jamal and Devin. He looked at them both for a long moment, 2 big men in civilian clothes, who were strangers to him in every sense. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Jamal leaned forward. "Because your sister asked us to," he said, "and because it is right." Ethan looked down at his hands. They were folded on the table in front of him. The hands of a man who fixed things for a living, who had built something honest from nothing, who had filed a legitimate complaint through legitimate channels and been destroyed for it. Then he looked back up, and he told them everything. Ethan's account was precise. That was the first thing Jamal noticed. The young man did not ramble, did not exaggerate. He told it the same way a good witness tells it, start to finish, in order, exactly what he saw and heard and felt without decoration. The second stop, the headlights in his mirror, Donovan's voice, Ruiz standing back by the cruiser. The exact moment Donovan walked to the rear of Ethan's car. "I walked around to my trunk," Ethan said. "I heard a door open, but it was not my trunk." He looked at Jamal steadily. "I never opened my trunk. I never touched it. He opened something on his own car first. Then he came back to mine." Devin wrote it down word for word. They had 2 names from Ethan before the visit ended. A retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Evelyn Hayes, who lived on Route 9 and had watched the second stop from her front porch, and a young man named Kyle Malone, who had been parked at the Route 9 Gas and Go across the road, waiting for a friend. 2 witnesses. It was not much, but it was something. Mrs. Evelyn Hayes lived in a pale yellow house with a covered porch and a flower bed that ran the full length of the front yard. She answered the door before Jamal could knock a second time, which told him she had seen them coming up the walk and had been deciding whether to open it. She was 68 years old, small and neat, with reading glasses pushed up on top of her head, and the careful eyes of a woman who had lived in Harland Falls long enough to know exactly how things worked here. She looked at Jamal, then at Devin, then past them both at the street. "Come inside," she said quietly. "Do not stand on the porch." She had sweet tea ready, which meant she had been expecting someone eventually. She sat across from them in a floral armchair and folded her hands in her lap and listened while Jamal explained who they were and why they were there. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I saw it," she said finally. "The whole thing, I was sitting right out there." She tilted her head toward the front porch. "I saw that officer walk to the back of his own car before he ever touched that boy's trunk." Her jaw tightened. "I knew what I saw. Would you be willing to testify to that?" Jamal asked. She looked at her hands. The silence stretched long enough to tell its own story. "I have lived here my whole life," she said. "My daughter lives 4 streets over. My grandchildren go to school in this county." She looked up. "I know what happens to people who make trouble for Blake Donovan." "Mrs. Hayes." Jamal leaned forward. "Ethan is 24 years old. He filed a legitimate complaint, and he is sitting in a cell for it. You may be the only person who can. I know that." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. She softened it. "I know that, young man. I have been knowing that, and it has not let me sleep." She looked out the window toward Route 9. "Let me think on it. Come back tomorrow." It was not yes, but it was not no. Kyle Malone was 22 and lived in a studio apartment above a laundromat on the south end of town. He cracked the door open a few inches and looked out at them through the gap like a man who had learned to be cautious about who he let in. Devin explained the situation in plain, direct terms. No pressure, just the facts. Kyle shook his head. "I cannot get involved in anything right now." "Why not?" Devin asked. Kyle looked at the floor. "I got a warrant. Traffic stuff, nothing serious. But if I start making noise, they will use it." Devin looked at Jamal. Jamal gave him a small nod. "Give me until tomorrow morning," Devin said. "I will have that warrant resolved through proper channels, legally, cleanly. It will be handled." Kyle looked at him for a long time. "You can do that?" "Yes." Another long look. Then Yadlikad opened the door a little wider. "Okay," he said. "Tomorrow morning. If it is handled, I will sign a statement." By the following morning, Devin had the warrant resolved. It took one favor and a phone call to a clerk in the county magistrate's office. It was done quietly and completely correctly, and it cost Devin something he would not mention to anyone. He knocked on Kyle's door at the agreed time. Kyle opened it. He looked at Devin. "It is gone." Kyle nodded slowly. He picked up a pen off his kitchen counter. He signed the statement. Then Donovan moved. Mrs. Evelyn Hayes called Jamal at noon. Her voice was shaking in a way it had not been the day before. "There is a patrol car sitting in front of my house," she said. "Been there a while. Nobody has gotten out. Nobody has knocked." She paused. "They are just sitting there." Jamal closed his eyes for 1 second. "Do not go outside," he said. "I will call you back." He called her back later. She did not answer. In the afternoon, Nicole's phone rang. It was Mrs. Evelyn Hayes. She was sorry, she said. She had thought about it more carefully. She was not sure what she saw had been as clear as she first thought. Her eyes were not what they used to be. She did not want to say something under oath that she could not be completely certain of. She was sorry. Nicole wrote it down without expression. She thanked Mrs. Hayes and ended the call and sat quietly for a moment with her pen in her hand. Kyle's phone went straight to voicemail that evening. His apartment when Devin drove past was dark. A neighbor said he had packed a bag and gone to stay with family. She did not know where. Jamal stood in the parking lot of the motel with his arms crossed and looked at the sky. Donovan was watching. Donovan had always been watching. And tomorrow, Ethan's trial was closer. Devin did not sleep that night. Jamal came out of the bathroom in the middle of the night and found him exactly where he had been, sitting on the edge of the bed, laptop open, empty coffee cups lined up on the nightstand, like a timeline of how long he had been at it. "Go to sleep," Jamal said. "In a minute. Jamal looked at the screen. Lines of data, file logs, timestamps. What are you looking at? Donovan's body camera footage from the night of Ethan's arrest. Devin did not look up. Or rather, I am looking at where it is not. Jamal sat down on the other bed. The official story was simple. Donovan's body camera had malfunctioned during the stop. The file was corrupted. Nothing was recoverable. It was documented in the incident report in 2 clean bureaucratic sentences that were designed to be read quickly and forgotten. Devin was not built for reading things quickly and forgetting them. The department uses a cloud backup system, he said. Every body camera in the Harlan County Sheriff's Department automatically uploads footage to a remote server within minutes of an officer's shift ending. He turned the laptop so Jamal could see the screen. This is the manifest log. It is a public record. Nicole filed a FOIA request, and it came back. Jamal looked at the log. Devin pointed. That is a file uploaded from Donovan's camera on the night of Ethan's arrest, uploaded right on schedule. He scrolled down. And that, he pointed again, that is the same file being deleted days later. Jamal looked at the date on the deletion entry, after the arrest, after Ethan's complaint was officially logged with the department. The room was very quiet. So the footage existed, Jamal said. The footage existed, Devin confirmed. It uploaded automatically like it was supposed to, and then somebody went in and deleted it. He closed the laptop. That is not a malfunction. That is a choice. They brought it to Nicole in the morning. She read the manifest log twice, holding it close like she was checking for something hidden between the lines. Then she set it flat on the desk and put both palms on it and stood there for a moment with her eyes closed. This is enough for emotion, she said. Potentially tampering with evidence. Federal preservation rules apply to body camera footage in an active criminal case. If that file existed and was deliberately deleted after charges were filed, they had a legal obligation to preserve it. She opened her eyes. She filed the emergency motion. The hearing was set for that afternoon. Harlan County Courthouse was a squat brick building that smelled like old carpet and copy paper. Judge Harlan Whitaker was a big man, gone soft with age, with white hair and reading glasses on a chain around his neck, and the unhurried manner of someone who had been the most powerful person in every room he had entered for decades. He did not look pleased to see Nicole Bennett. She presented the motion with the precision of a surgeon. The manifest log, the upload timestamp, the deletion date, the federal preservation statute, the direct correlation between the deletion and the filing of Ethan's complaint. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The facts raised themselves. Judge Whitaker looked at the documents over the top of his glasses. He looked at Nicole. He looked at D.A. Marcus Langston, who sat at the prosecution table with his hands folded and his expression arranged into something that resembled patience. Your Honor, Nicole said, we are requesting immediate production of the original server backup and a preservation order on all remaining data. Judge Whitaker was quiet for a long moment. Then he granted the motion, barely, with the speed of a man doing something he had been told he had no legal choice but to do. From the gallery, Jamal watched Langston's face as the judge ruled. Langston did not flinch. He did not tighten his jaw or shift in his seat. He just nodded slightly, like a man who had already anticipated this move and had already prepared the next one. That bothered Jamal more than anger would have. Anger meant you were surprised. Langston was not surprised. Langston was ready. Walking out of the courthouse, Devin fell into step beside Jamal and said quietly, We cracked it open. Jamal looked straight ahead. Maybe, he said. He kept walking. The USB drive arrived the following morning. A sheriff's deputy dropped it off at the courthouse clerk's office in a standard evidence envelope with a chain of custody form attached. Nicole signed for it personally. She held it in her palm for a moment, a small plastic rectangle that was supposed to contain the truth about what happened on Route 9, the night Ethan's life got taken apart. And then she put it in her briefcase and walked to the motel without saying a word. Her tech consultant was already waiting. His name was Philip. He was 30 years old, wore a faded university sweatshirt, and had the kind of quiet competence that did not need to announce itself. Nicole had used him on previous cases. He set up his equipment on the motel room desk without being asked, and held out his hand for the drive without ceremony. Jamal, Devin, and Caitlin stood back and watched. Philip inserted the drive. His fingers moved across the keyboard. The room was silent, except for the low hum of the laptop fan and the distant sound of a truck on Route 9. Then footage appeared on the screen, a dashboard view. Night. The familiar stretch of Route 9 caught in the white beam of patrol car headlights. The timestamp in the corner read the date of Ethan's arrest. The audio was clear. Road noise, the crackle of a police radio, Donovan's breathing. Ethan's car came into frame. Pulled over. Hazard lights blinking orange in the dark. They watched Ethan get out of the car, watched him put his hands up without being asked. The practiced, instinctive movement of a young black man who had been taught from childhood exactly how to survive a traffic stop. Watched him comply with every instruction. Step back. Turn around. Hands behind his head. He did everything right. Every single thing. Caitlin made a small sound beside Jamal. Not quite a word. He did not look at her, but he moved half a step closer. And then the footage stopped. Not gradually. Not with static or distortion. Just stopped. A clean cut, like a page torn from a book. One frame, Donovan was walking toward the rear of Ethan's vehicle, and the next frame, he was back at the driver's window, and the timestamp had jumped forward by exactly 4 minutes and 11 seconds. 4 minutes and 11 seconds gone. According to Donovan's written report, those were the exact 4 minutes and 11 seconds during which he approached the rear of the vehicle, opened the trunk, and discovered the bag of methamphetamine sitting in plain sight. The most important 4 minutes of the entire case vanished. Philip leaned back in his chair. "This was not corrupted," he said. He said it the way a doctor says something definitive. Not dramatically, just clearly. A corrupted file degrades. The audio breaks up. The image pixelates. The timestamp stutters. This is a clean cut. Someone went into this file and removed that section deliberately. Jamal stood up straighter. Nicole turned to look at Jamal. Jamal looked at the screen at the timestamp frozen after the jump, at the 4 missing minutes sitting in the middle of the footage like a hole punched through the center of a piece of paper. "That is tampering," Devin said. "That is tampering," Nicole confirmed. Her voice was controlled, but something moved behind her eyes, something sharp and certain. She turned to Philip. "How fast can you document that technically in language a judge can understand?" 2 hours. "You have 1. She was already reaching for her legal pad. "I am filing a motion to dismiss. Evidence tampering. The chain of custody on these charges runs directly through footage that has been deliberately altered." She wrote as she talked. "This is not just cause for dismissal. This is a federal crime." She looked up for just a moment, one brief, unguarded moment. The room felt different, lighter, like something that had been pressing down on all of them since the day they walked into this fight had lifted slightly. Caitlin pressed both hands over her mouth. Devin exhaled slowly through his nose and looked at the ceiling. Jamal looked at the screen at the clean, deliberate cut in the middle of the footage. They had them. The evidence was right there. Documented. Technical. Undeniable. Donovan had stood in that courtroom and submitted footage he had personally edited. That was not a mistake. That was not a malfunction. That was a man so certain of his own protection that he had committed a federal crime on a court-ordered evidence submission and handed it over with his name on the envelope. Jamal should have felt relieved. He did not. He stood at the edge of the room and watched Nicole write, and felt the thing he always felt when a situation resolved itself too cleanly, too fast, too conveniently. The same quiet warning he had felt every time in every operation, right before the ground shifted beneath his feet. He kept it to himself for now. The motion was heard the next morning. Nicole had been up until late preparing it. Every argument clean and precise. The technical documentation from Philip, the timestamp analysis, the chain of custody. She had built it the way she built everything. Carefully, completely, with no gaps and no assumptions. She walked into that courthouse looking like a woman who had already won. Judge Harlan Whitaker called the hearing to order. Nicole presented the motion in minutes. She laid out every piece of evidence in plain, logical order. The cloud backup log showing the original upload. Philip's technical analysis, confirming deliberate editing rather than corruption. The 4-minute and 11-second gap landing exactly where Donovan's report claimed the drugs were found. She connected every dot clearly and without drama because the facts did not need drama. They needed to be heard. When she finished, Judge Whitaker looked at DA Marcus Langston over the top of his glasses. Langston stood up slowly. He buttoned his jacket. He smoothed the front of it. He picked up a single manila folder from the table in front of him, opened it, and removed a small stack of documents with the unhurried ease of a man who had been waiting for this exact moment since before the hearing was even scheduled. "Your Honor," he said pleasantly, "I appreciate Ms. Bennett's thorough presentation. I would like to offer some context." He submitted the documents to the clerk. Copies were handed to Nicole. She looked at the top page. Jamal watched her face from the gallery. He watched something change in it. Not collapse, not break, but tighten. The way a face tightens when it absorbs something unexpected and refuses to show how much it hurts. Langston explained it with the calm patience of a professor correcting a student's honest mistake. The 4-minute gap in Donovan's body camera footage, he said, was entirely consistent with a documented firmware malfunction affecting that specific model of department-issue body camera. A glitch that caused intermittent recording gaps during high CPU operations, such as night vision activation, combined with simultaneous audio processing. The department had identified the issue weeks before Ethan's arrest and submitted a formal memo to the manufacturer. He had the memo. He had the manufacturer's acknowledgement letter. He had documentation of prior incidents, other officers, other stops, same gap pattern. From the weeks preceding the arrest, he submitted all of it. Every piece of it real, every piece of it official, every piece of it prepared and waiting like a trap that had been set before anyone even knew they were walking into the woods. Nicole objected twice precisely. She argued that documented prior glitches did not explain metadata inconsistencies in the specific file submitted. She argued that the deletion from the cloud backup remained unaddressed. She argued that the correlation between the deletion date and the complaint filing date was not coincidental. Judge Whitaker listened to all of it. Then he ruled the gap was consistent with a documented technical fault. There was insufficient evidence that the submitted file had been manually altered. The production order had been satisfied. The motion to dismiss was denied. Ethan's trial would begin as scheduled the next morning. The courthouse hallway was empty when they walked out. Nicole stopped walking about 20 feet from the exit doors. She turned toward the wall. She put the fingertips of one hand flat against the paint and stood there with her head slightly bowed and breathed in, out, in. Jamal and Devin stood back and gave her that. After a moment, she straightened, turned around, and put her reading glasses back in her pocket. Her face was composed. Her voice was steady. "He had it ready," she said. "That memo, those prior incidents, he had all of it prepared before we ever filed." She looked at Jamal. "They knew we would find the gap. They built the explanation before we built the argument." Nobody said anything. Then Nicole's phone buzzed. She looked at it. Something crossed her face. "Ethan was in an altercation in the jail last night," she said quietly. "His case manager just sent word. Says it was minor. Says he is fine." She paused. "He is not fine." Donovan's reach went inside the walls, too. Jamal looked at Devin. Devin looked at the floor. Caitlin had been standing 2 steps behind them the whole time. She was 28 years old, and she had not eaten in a long time, and she had just watched the best attorney she had ever seen get the floor pulled out from under her in open court. She looked at the exit doors. Then she looked at Jamal. "They are going to take him from me," she said quietly. Not a question, just a woman standing at the edge of something terrible looking down. Jamal looked at her, then at Devin. Devin shook his head slowly. "No, they are not." Jamal took out his phone. He walked to the far end of the hallway. He found the number he had not used in years, a number he had kept for a moment exactly like this one, hoping he would never need it. He pressed call. "Ramirez," he said. "I need you to look at a metadata file." That night, nobody slept. Nicole sat at the desk with her reading glasses on and worked through every document in the case file again, looking for anything she might have missed. Caitlin sat in the corner chair with her knees pulled up and her phone in her hand, checking it every few minutes like Ethan might somehow call from inside a county jail. Devin had his laptop open and his headphones around his neck and was doing what he did best, pulling footage, cross-referencing timestamps, following threads that most people would not have thought to pull. Jamal sat on the edge of the bed and waited. He was good at waiting. It was one of the things the Navy had built into him so deep, it had become part of his structure. You did your preparation. You put your people in position, and then you waited with your whole body alert and your face completely still until the moment came. The moment always came. His phone rang in this middle of the night. He was outside in the parking lot before the second ring finished. "Ramirez!" Yeah, Agent Ramirez had a voice like gravel on a tin roof. Low, flat, carrying no more weight than it needed to. "I looked at your file. A pause, not hesitation. The pause of a man choosing his words with the precision of someone who understood that words once spoken became part of the record. The file submitted to the court and the file that was originally uploaded to that cloud server are not the same file. Ramirez said the backup log contains a cryptographic hash, basically a digital fingerprint of every file at the moment it is uploaded. That hash is permanent. It does not change." Another pause. "The hash of the original upload does not match the hash of the file on that USB drive." Jamal stood very still in the dark parking lot. "They are not the same file," Ramirez repeated. "Somebody took the original, edited it, and submitted the edited version to the court. The original fingerprint proves it. Can you document that?" "Already did. I am sending it now." Jamal heard keys clicking. But that is not all. Jamal waited. The metadata embedded in the submitted file, the edited one, contains a device identifier. Every time a file is opened and saved on a computer, that machine leaves a fingerprint in the metadata, an ID number registered to the specific device. Ramirez paused. I ran that ID against the Harlan County Sheriff's Department equipment registry. The parking lot was completely silent, not even wind. It is registered to a department-issued laptop, Ramirez said, assigned to Officer Blake Donovan. He let that sit for exactly 1 second. The edit was made days after the arrest, after the formal complaint was logged. Jamal closed his eyes, not from relief, from the particular feeling of a weapon clicking into place. The cold, precise satisfaction of a thing that cannot be argued with, cannot be explained away, cannot be buried under a firmware memo prepared in advance by a careful and corrupt DA. This is federal, Jamal said. Evidence tampering submitted to a court of law, Ramirez said. On his own machine, with his own credentials. Yeah, this is federal. Another pause. I also want you to know that I did this by the book, Jamal. Every step this holds. I know it does. Jamal looked at the motel room window. The light was still on. Send everything to this number. He went back inside. Nicole read the analysis standing up. She did not sit down. She held the printed pages Jamal had run to the 24-hour copy shop on Route 9 to produce, and she read them once completely, and then went back to the beginning and read them again. Then she set the pages on the desk and put both palms flat on top of them. The hash mismatch proves the file was altered, she said. The device ID proves who altered it. The timestamp proves when. She looked up. Langston's firmware memo explains a gap in footage. It does not explain why the file submitted to this court has a different cryptographic fingerprint than the file originally uploaded to the department's own server. She picked up her pen. No firmware glitch changes a hash. No firmware glitch leaves a device ID in the metadata. No firmware glitch edits minutes out of a file on a specific officer's personal laptop after a complaint is filed. Caitlin was standing in the doorway between the two rooms. She had heard all of it. So it is real, she said. It is actually real. It is real, Nicole said. And it is federal. She was already writing. We are not going back to Judge Whitaker. She looked at the clock on the wall. I need one more thing, she said. She looked at Devin. Tell me what you found on that real estate camera. Devin turned his laptop around. Been sitting on this for hours, he said. Wanted to make sure before I said anything. The screen showed a paused video feed. Grainy night shot. The image had the washed-out, slightly smeared quality of cheap security footage pushed past what it was built to capture. At the top right corner of the frame was the logo of Harlan County Realty. At the bottom left corner was a sliver of Route 9. Just the edge. Just enough like the road had leaned into the shot without meaning to. The camera is mounted on the eave of the real estate office, Devin said. Faces the parking lot, but the angle clips Route 9 a distance down the road. He tapped the bottom left corner of the screen. Right there, that strip of road. That is where Ethan was pulled over. Nicole leaned in close. I spent hours on this footage, Devin continued, enhancing it, stabilizing it, matching the timestamps against Donovan's official incident report. He looked at Jamal, and I found something. He hit play. The footage was dark and difficult. The real estate parking lot sat empty and still in the foreground, lit by a single overhead lamp. Route 9 in the bottom corner was barely visible. A thin strip of pale road surface caught between the camera's edge and the darkness beyond it. Then a vehicle pulled into frame on Route 9, a patrol car. It moved slowly and pulled to the shoulder and stopped. Its light stayed on. Devin paused the footage, pointed to the timestamp. "This is minutes before Ethan's car appears in the frame," he said. "Minutes before the stop officially began." He hit play again. A figure got out of the driver's side of the patrol car. The image was grainy and distant, and the night swallowed most of the details, but the uniform was visible. The build was visible, and the movement, deliberate, purposeful, unhurried, was visible. The figure walked to the rear of the patrol car, opened it, reached inside, removed something. The object was small, and the image was too degraded to identify it with certainty, but the action was clear. The figure held something, looked at it briefly, and then closed the rear of the vehicle. Then the figure walked back to the driver's side and got in. Devin paused it again. The room was absolutely silent. "Minutes later," Devin said quietly, "Ethan's car appears on that road." The stop begins, and minutes of body camera footage, the exact minutes during which Donovan claims he found drugs in Ethan's trunk, disappears. He closed the laptop slowly. Donovan was on that shoulder before Ethan ever drove past. He retrieved something from his own vehicle before the stop began, and then he made sure nobody would ever see what happened next. Nicole straightened up. She was not a woman given to visible emotion in working moments, but something moved across her face, something quiet and fierce and absolute. "He came prepared," she said. "He came prepared," Devin confirmed. Caitlin had both arms wrapped around herself in the doorway. She was looking at the closed laptop like it contained something she had always known was true, but had never been able to prove. Like the ground under months of fear and exhaustion had finally revealed what it was made of. "Can you authenticate it?" Nicole asked. "Chain of custody, timestamps, everything a federal court needs." "Already started," Devin said. "I pulled the original unedited footage directly from the real estate office's backup server. The owner let me copy it when I explained the situation. I have the original file, the device it came from, and a signed statement from the owner confirming it has not been touched." He looked at Nicole. "I also have a digital forensics contact at Kings Bay who can certify the timestamp integrity by morning." Nicole nodded once, the nod of someone moving immediately to the next step. She picked up her pen and her legal pad, and she began to write with the focused energy of a woman who had just been handed everything she needed and intended to use every single piece of it. "We have two things," she said as she wrote. "Ramirez gives us proof that Donovan edited the body camera footage on his own laptop and submitted the altered file to a federal court proceeding." She kept writing without looking up. "This footage gives us proof that Donovan was positioned at the stop site early and retrieved an object from his own vehicle before Ethan arrived." She stopped writing, looked up. "Neither one of these things is a theory," she said. "Neither one requires a jury to believe a witness who can be intimidated or a neighbor who can be frightened into silence." She held up the legal pad. "This is metadata. This is timestamps. This is digital evidence that does not get scared, does not move away, and does not change its story because a patrol car sat outside its house." She stood up from the desk. "We are bypassing Whitaker entirely," she said. "This goes to federal court." She looked at the clock. "I need coffee, a lot of it, and I need everyone in this room to stay awake for the next hours." Devin was already reaching for his phone. Jamal looked at Caitlin. She had uncrossed her arms. She was standing straighter than she had stood in days. Her chin was up, and her eyes were clear, and she looked like a woman who had just felt the tide turn beneath her feet and recognized it for exactly what it was, hours until Ethan's trial was supposed to begin. They got to work. Nicole filed the federal motion with a cover letter that was pages long and read like a controlled detonation, measured, precise, and impossible to ignore. It contained Ramirez's metadata analysis, the cryptographic hash comparison, the device ID registered to Donovan's department laptop, the timestamp of the edit, and Devin's authenticated footage from the real estate camera with the forensic certification attached. She cited federal statutes and Supreme Court precedent. Then she sat back in her chair, took off her reading glasses, and drank the last of her cold coffee. "Now we wait," she said. Nobody slept. They just waited in their own ways. Devin organized files. Caitlin sat by the window and watched Route 9 go gray and then pink as the sun came up behind the tree line. Jamal stood outside in the parking lot for a long time with his arms crossed, watching the sky change color, running the operation in his head, from beginning to end the way he always did before the final phase, looking for the thing he might have missed, the angle he had not covered, the gap in the plan that could still cost them everything. He did not find one. He went back inside. A sheriff's transport van pulled out of the Harland County Detention Center and turned south toward the courthouse. Ethan was in the back of it. He had been up since early. He had eaten the breakfast they gave him without tasting it. He was wearing the civilian clothes Caitlin had dropped off, a pressed blue shirt, dark slacks, the clothes of a man trying to look like what he was, which was innocent. He sat with his hands folded between his knees and looked at the floor of the van and tried to hold on to the thing Jamal had told him through the jail glass. He is not alone anymore. He held on to it as hard as he could. Nicole's phone rang. She looked at the screen, closed her eyes for 1 second, opened them. "Yes," she said. She listened. Her face gave nothing away. "Yes, understood. Thank you, Your Honor." She ended the call. She looked at Jamal. "A federal judge in Atlanta just issued an emergency stay of trial," she said. "Effective immediately. Ethan's case is frozen pending a federal review of the evidence tampering allegations." She paused. "The stay order is being transmitted to the Harland County Courthouse Clerk's office right now." Caitlin made a sound that was not quite a word. Jamal nodded once slowly. "Let us go." The courthouse parking lot was quiet when they arrived. A few cars, a news van from a Savannah TV station that had picked up the federal filing from the court's public docket overnight. Someone at the station had been paying attention. 2 court clerks smoking by the side entrance. An ordinary morning in Harland Falls, Georgia, except that standing beside his patrol car near the far end of the lot, watching the transport van pull in, was Officer Blake Donovan. He was in full uniform, badge polished, arms crossed. He had the look of a man attending a ceremony he had organized himself. Comfortable, certain, completely in control of how this morning was going to go. He watched the transport van park. He watched the side door open. He did not notice the 2 men in dark suits walking across the parking lot toward him until they were feet away. They had their credentials out before he could speak. Jamal watched it happen from yards away. He watched Donovan look at the badges, watched him read them, watched something move across his face that Jamal had never seen there before in all the days since this began. Something that started at the eyes and traveled down and changed the whole shape of the man's expression from the inside out. He knew. He knew before they said a word. The senior agent spoke. His voice did not carry across the parking lot, but his posture said everything. Donovan's chin dropped slightly. His arms came uncrossed. His hands moved to his sides. Then the agent produced a document, and Donovan looked at it, and whatever was left of his certainty left his body all at once, visibly, like air going out of something. He was placed under arrest, federal charges, evidence tampering, civil rights violations under color of law, filing false police reports, obstruction of justice. The transport van sat feet away with its engine still running. Inside it, a 24-year-old man in a pressed blue shirt had no idea that the person who had destroyed his life was standing in handcuffs in the parking lot outside. Ruiz was in the lobby when he saw it through the glass doors. He stood completely still for full seconds. Then he walked to the nearest bench and sat down heavily and put his head in both hands. A courthouse security guard looked at him. "You okay?" Ruiz looked up. His face had the wrecked, pale look of a man who had just watched something he had been pretending was not coming arrive right on schedule. "I need a lawyer," he said. Then, seconds later, in a voice barely above a whisper, "And I want to make a statement." Ruiz's lawyer arrived. She was a public defender named Castillo, young, fast, clearly competent, and she spent time in a private room with Ruiz before she came out and told the federal agents that her client was prepared to cooperate fully in exchange for consideration on the lesser charges. The senior agent, whose name was Dimitri, listened to her terms without expression, and then made a call to the U.S. Attorney's office that lasted minutes. Then he came back and said, "We are ready when he is." Ruiz talked for hours. Jamal and Devin did not hear it in real time. Nobody did except the agents, the attorneys, and a federal court reporter whose fingers never stopped moving. What they learned came in pieces through Nicole, who had contacts inside the federal building in Atlanta, who knew how to say a great deal while technically saying very little, but the shape of it became clear. Ruiz had been Donovan's partner for years. In that time, he had watched things he should have stopped and said nothing about things he should have reported, and convinced himself in the particular way that weak people convince themselves of terrible things, that staying quiet was just survival and not complicity. He was wrong. He had known he was wrong for a long time. He named cases, separate incidents over years in which Donovan had used his badge as a weapon against people who had challenged him, inconvenienced him, or simply existed in his path on the wrong day. Traffic stops that were never about traffic, searches that were never about evidence, charges that were never about the law. He named the dates. He named the locations. He described conversations, specific words, specific phrases that passed between Donovan and Marcus Langston before formal charges were ever filed in those cases. Informal calls, texts, a standing lunch at a steakhouse on the county line every other week, where the two men discussed over their meals which cases needed to move fast, and which complaints needed to disappear, and which witnesses had suddenly become uncertain about what they saw. Langston did not just prosecute the cases Donovan brought him. He shaped them. He prepared for challenges before they were filed. He built contingencies like the firmware memo into cases before defense attorneys even knew which way the wind was blowing. He had been doing it for years with the smooth, practiced ease of a man who had never once been asked to explain himself and had stopped expecting that he ever would be. Ruiz knew about the body camera edit, not the technical details. He was not that kind of careful, but he knew. He had been in the patrol car when Donovan spent time on his laptop the night after the arrest. He had asked what Donovan was doing. Donovan had told him to mind his own business in language that was clear about what the consequences of not minding it would be. Ruiz had minded his own business. He said that into the record with his head down and his voice flat, and the particular exhausted honesty of a man who had run out of places to hide from himself. Marcus Langston resigned. His assistant released a 2-paragraph statement to the local press, citing personal health concerns and a desire to spend more time with his family. It was the kind of statement that said nothing, and everyone understood perfectly. The State Bar Association opened a formal investigation before the afternoon was out. 3 of Langston's past convictions, cases where Donovan had been the arresting officer, were immediately flagged for review by the State Attorney General's office. Judge Harlan Whitaker filed a recusal notice from every pending case involving the Harlan County Sheriff's Department. His clerk released it without comment. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation arrived in Harlan Falls, 2 unmarked vehicles, agents. They went directly to the Sheriff's Department and asked for the records room. By afternoon, the Department of Justice had opened a preliminary inquiry into the Harlan County Sheriff's Department for pattern and practice civil rights violations. The inquiry had been triggered by Nicole's federal filing, which had not limited itself to Ethan's case alone. It had named all prior complainants, all outcomes, and drawn a clear, documented line between every single one of them and the man who was currently sitting in federal custody with his badge in an evidence bag. Jamal stood outside the courthouse and watched the GBI vehicles in the parking lot. Devin stood beside him. "Years," Devin said quietly. "He did this for years." "Longer," Jamal said. "We only found years." The afternoon sun was warm on the courthouse steps. Route 9 ran past, steady and unhurried, the same road it had always been, carrying the same ordinary traffic it always carried. Except that today, for the first time in a very long time, something in this town had shifted. Something that did not shift back. The dismissal order came. A federal public affairs officer read it aloud in the courthouse hallway. A narrow corridor with fluorescent lights and scuffed linoleum floors that had seen a lot of things go wrong over the years and had never once cared. He read it in a flat, official voice that gave no particular weight to any individual word, because official voices never do. But every word landed anyway. Charges dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice. That meant permanent. That meant final. That meant Blake Donovan could rot in federal custody for the rest of his natural life. And nobody, not another DA, not another judge, not another corrupt machine in another county, could ever pick these charges back up and use them against Ethan again. Done. Finished. Gone. The public affairs officer folded the order, tucked it under his arm, and walked back down the hallway the way he had come. His shoes squeaked on the linoleum. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Nicole Bennett exhaled long and slow and complete, and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose and stood very still with her eyes closed. It lasted seconds. That was all she gave herself. Then she opened her eyes, straightened her blazer, and turned to face the room. Jamal was looking at the door at the end of the hallway, the one that led to the side entrance, the one they said Ethan would come through. It took minutes. Minutes of the 4 of them standing in that hallway. Jamal, Devin, Nicole, and Caitlin. Not talking much, not needing to. Devin checked his phone. Nicole reviewed something in her briefcase. Jamal stood with his arms at his sides and watched the door. Caitlin watched the door too. She had her hands clasped in front of her and her back straight and her chin level. She was 28 years old, and she had worked double shifts and eaten vending machine dinners and made phone calls that rang out to voicemail and stood in her own workplace while a man grabbed her arm and a room full of people looked at the floor. She had sat in courtrooms and motel rooms and a county jail visiting room. She had not broken, not once, not even close. The door opened. A corrections officer came through first, then Ethan. He was still in his civilian clothes, the pressed blue shirt, the dark slacks, the clothes of an innocent man who had spent days being treated like he was something else. He came through the door, blinking slightly, the way people blink when they step from one kind of air into another. He looked at the hallway, at the fluorescent lights, at Nicole, at Devin. Then he found his sister. Caitlin did not run. She walked steady and purposeful, the way she did everything. The way she carried plates and refilled coffee and stood her ground in a diner and refused to be made small. She crossed the hallway in 8 steps, and when she reached him, she put both hands on either side of his face and held it. She looked at him for a long moment. His face, his eyes, the bruise along his jaw that was yellowing now at the edges. All of him. Ethan's chin trembled once. He pressed his lips together hard and held it. The hallway was quiet. What passed between them in that moment was not something the narrative attempted to capture. Some things belong only to the people inside them. Days, a fabricated charge. Years hanging over a 24-year-old man's head like a blade on a string. The particular terror of a system turning against you and the particular relief of discovering it could still be stopped. That lived between Caitlin and Ethan, and nowhere else. After a moment, she pulled him close, and he dropped his head and let her hold him the way younger siblings let older ones hold them when there is nobody watching, and the pretending is finally over. Jamal turned away, gave them that. Devin looked at the ceiling for a moment with his jaw set and his eyes bright, and his expression arranged into something that was not going to be called what it was. Nicole closed her briefcase with a soft click. After a moment, Devin said quietly, not to anyone in particular, just to the air, "You know, I really just wanted the biscuits." Jamal stood with his back to the room and his arms crossed. Something happened at the corners of his mouth. Not a smile exactly. Something better. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support the channel and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.